Baxter sat up straighter in his chair and considered how he wanted to begin the story. His focused mindset momentarily overcame the tiredness that clung to him. As you know, I traveled to Northern California, and it was a monumental drive, several hours of me myself on the road. That car was wonderful. It got me there and here again without a single issue when I had every reason to rebel against all the potholes I accidentally hit. What? Baxter paused on that note and took a drink of his coffee. He placed the cup down on the table and winced. It's somewhat silly now that I'm vocalizing it, but I feel a tinge of guilt for all the miles I've managed to put in that vehicle over the course of this vacation. Sighing deeply, Baxter wore a wistful look. You understood that the magnitude of his trip. Hopefully, the rental company didn't have extra charges for that. On a brighter note, the drive was even more scenic than I imagined. It was a shame I couldn't snap a single picture. Still, I'm grateful that I was able to leisurely travel across the state while I was here, I bet. And all that fuss to see some old family friends. Believe it or not, they're actually people my parents have known since, well, before I was even alive. Wow. Wow, indeed. I can't even imagine knowing someone for that many years. Though, between you and me, I don't have much of a relationship with them myself. Really, but you went completely out of your way to see them. I know. They've always been fond of me almost as if I was their own nephew. They're more than happy to open the door to me given the chance. This might surprise you or perhaps not, but I managed to get along famously with an older set. So it was only polite to make a social call while in the relative area, and there was plenty to catch up on and discuss while I was there. We even happened to catch some fantastic shows. It's nice you enjoyed the trip within your trip. Baxter's nose scrunched as he chuckled. He took another quick sip of his drink. I can't agree more. The two of you continued to chat about upcoming plans while finishing your drinks, and also in between several more extended and defiant yawns from Baxter. Eventually, he glanced towards the window and his brow pinched. He didn't say anything on his own, so you asked, "What's wrong?"
Well,
I'm worried that I might be keeping you too long from your other plans. It's not too late yet. I don't want there to be a yet. Your family's important. Do you want to get going then? Yes, that would be for the best. He turned in his seat until he caught where the waitress had gone. Baxter waved, and she returned a minute later. Could we please have the check? I'd like a check for mine, too. The waitress nodded, and you'd been fishing out your wallet. Your brain was already running the numbers over how much you were spending this morning and what you were planning on leaving for a tip. You've got it. I'll get that for you right away. As soon as the waitress was out of sight, Baxter let out yet another yawn, but it morphed into a frustrated groan. I'm getting fairly sick of that. His tone didn't sugarcoat a single feeling. Pouting, Baxter crossed his arms and tightly shut his eyes. It's a sucky experience when you're that exhausted. Baxter only murmured and roughly rubbed the sides of his face. His frustration manifest visibly as a grimace. I can distinctly feel my own eyeballs in my skull due to the strain. His hand dropped onto the table and the glasses rattled softly. That only made his mood worsen. I hate that. I shouldn't have to be so aware of my own presence in this body. You patted him on the shoulder. You wanted to help him, but there wasn't anything else that you could really do. Baxter cracked an eye open at your gesture. You've been more than gracious for sitting through my complaints. I don't mind. It would be better if I could do more. No, you've done more than enough. I shall live through it. You smiled, and Baxter genuinely tried to match it despite how he was feeling. The waitress approached once more with a small black folder and placed it on the center of the tabletop. Can I clear any of this away for you? No rush if you're not ready. Please take it all. We're about to leave. The waitress got right to work gathering the cups. Baxter, meanwhile, picked up the folder and opened it. After a few moments, the server was off again, and Baxter peeked at you over the top of the folder. Thank you, Brittany. I do appreciate you making time for me at the very last minute, and especially on a day when you were already so busy. Thanks for inviting me. Of course, it's always a treat to see you. Baxter's half-lidded gaze lingered contentedly while he reached in his pocket, and then those tired eyes snapped open. He reached the alertness he'd been striving in for an instant. My wallet. Oh, you forgot it! He stared at you helplessly. Baxter was sober and extremely aware of the reality he'd found himself in. I didn't bring my wallet. When I got dressed, I did not recall to take my wallet off the nightstand. Haha, this means this will be my treat. You grinned boldly, but your cheer fizzled out when Baxter didn't respond. He continued to stare at the check in horror. Understandably, Baxter was mortified. He threaded his fingers through his hair. Ow. Oh, goodness me. Goodness me. Goodness me. Hi, Cheetah. Would you like to come in? Come on. Come on. Come on. Hi. What do you want? I'm recording. You're interrupting. Hello, baby. Come here. Oh, you're getting so big. Sorry, y'all. My cat wanted to come in. I'm holding him right now. What's wrong? What? Are you tired? Me too. I'm tired too. Okay, Cheeto. Please don't mess anything up while you're up on my vanity. Alright. I'll quickly run back and get it in return, but then I'd have to abandon you here, and that's not any better. Perhaps they might take an electronic payment I could send through my phone? All you got was a black coffee I can cover for you. The corner of his mouth twitched, and you read that as a sign that he'd at least heard you, though you suppose it was only because he had reached a dead end in his own abilities to solve this problem. Baxter pressed his palms against his eyes, and his fingers curled tightly. He released a slow, shaky breath. He reached out only to freeze halfway across the table from his tense body language. He was trying with great difficulty to keep himself from getting truly upset. You shouldn't push him. You weren't sure how to help or what to do. You could only watch. He exhaled deeply once more, and this time he lowered his hands, folding them neatly on the table. I would appreciate that greatly. He couldn't quite look at you while he spoke, though the forced politeness in his tone reached you completely. Yeah, don't worry about it. You collected the check he dropped in his panic and slid your card into it. Well, when the waitress swung by you, handed it over. There was no trouble to be found at this table. Thanks a bunch. Just 1 minute. She walked off, and you shifted your attention to Baxter. In that brief period, his shoulders had lost their defeated slump, and he sat stiffly upright instead. He studied your reaction with a delicate smile. Please don't misunderstand. I am entirely fine. The issue is with my behavior towards you. You don't need to force yourself to make me feel better. It was all my mistake. You're so formal, Baxter, and I get really sick of it sometimes. His lips pressed into a fine line, and it was crystal clear that he was preventively stopping you from further okaying the situation. Your gaze dropped to the tabletop, and the awkwardness was too stifling to do anything else. The way Baxter was beating himself up for perfectly normal missteps was horrible. You didn't like it at all. There was a reason why people call these kinds of situations accidents, because there was no manipulative or malicious intent. His only crime today was being human and sleepy. It would have been great to remind him of all that, but Baxter was far too irked to hear any of it. He wanted to move on, so you bookmarked things there. The days wrapped up in a haze. The waitress returned your card and wished you both a wonderful day, then you left. Baxter managed to muster up a few things to discuss on the car ride home, but the conversation was distant and disjointed from how you both normally clicked. You made it home safely, though not before a silence had time to form. The slamming of his door to exit the vehicle was the first you'd heard from Baxter in a while. The two of you stood on the street face to face, but the awkwardness from the cafe had also come along for the ride, and it lingered forebodingly. This wasn't something you wanted to continue between you and him. Neither of you made a move to leave, a promising sign that he was struggling with the same thought. Baxter began sliding his fingers through his hair, but then he paused mid-motion and dug his nails into his scalp, his controlled expression strained.
I'm sorry.
Brittany, this is all my fault. I not only forgot my wallet, but I made things increasingly worse by acting immature about it, undoubtedly making you uncomfortable. I hope my ability to deal with prior difficulties ameliorates some of the concern I may have raised. Today stung a little more than usual. I'm big enough to admit that. It certainly did not help that all this was coming on the heels of the already disastrous first impression. I had been hopeful that I could still fix the overall impression by the end. Needless to say, I didn't succeed, and I completely understand if you were doubting the merit of a relationship with me at this point. I presented myself terribly to you. What a mortifying first date to go through. However, if you're willing to, I would like to ask for a second chance. Okay? I can take you out again for drinks tomorrow night, or rather any night you have free. Oh, I promise the next one will be better. Oh my gosh, so sweet. A dusting of a blush rose in his cheeks while he barreled through everything he needed to say before you could get a single word in. Finally, Baxter paused to breathe. You blinked, trying to absorb the magnitude of everything he'd said. Now that he laid out all his cards on the table, there was nothing left to do but anxiously wait. Above all else, he wedged open a space for you to talk, and that was a relief. Don't feel bad about that. Today might have not been as graceful as you like, but I enjoy hanging out with you. I'm not going to stop talking to you over something so silly. We all have rough days. Oh, you're far too kind. But I will need some clarification if that's a yes or no for the second round. Yes, Baxter, I will get drinks with you. His gaze was gentle, if only for a single look. Baxter swiftly resumed his usual grit and confidence. I'll be in touch later with a specific time then, and potentially a suggestion for what you might want to wear. Have a lovely rest of your day with your family. Tell your mothers and sister I said hello. I will. Excellent. See you again soon. He waved goodbye and earnestly seemed to be in a much better mood than only a few minutes ago. You waved too, even though his turned back couldn't see. Bye. He steadily walked home, and once he was safely inside, you couldn't hold your frown in any longer. All morning, Baxter acted as if he had to be the one who needed to earn approval. To him, you weren't individuals getting to know each other. He was an outsider who had to jump through hoops or be excluded. That was the impression you got, and it was more than upsetting. Maybe he took it that hard because he was so tired. That felt like wishful thinking, but you thought so anyway. It was possible Baxter would be more comfortable after he rested. And if he wasn't, then you hoped that he would allow you to show him that your company didn't have to be like that. The rest of the day was focused on your family, and it overall was a great one. It was nice spending the afternoon with your aunt and uncle, moms, and Liz. And you remembered to tell them Baxter said hi. You were half asleep when you finally made it home and collapsed into your bed. Soon morning had come again. The afternoon that followed moved strangely fast and slow because you knew there was another day to the end of it. Exactly as promised, you received a text with a set hour to meet him at his condo. Baxter informed you that it was going to be late when you'd be leaving, so he recommended that you have dinner as usual. Apparently this place did not serve meals, only drinks and appetizers. Interesting. Along with that, Baxter made the eyebrow-raising suggestion that you should wear formal attire. Even more interesting. Ooh, okay. He included an assurance that he'd be prepared when you were ready to leave. During dinner, you mentioned that you were going out for drinks with Baxter later. Your moms were still commenting on your plans when you left to get ready. Even a few teasing remarks over the dress code floated upstairs with you. When you opened your drawer, your mind was made up. You'd wear something. Ooh, grandly formal. Let's do grandly. Sure, go out. You closed the drawer and instead dug into the very back of your closet. You plucked the pieces you almost never wore. Baxter suggested formal, but that was Baxter speaking. Formal to him had to mean something entirely more on the grand scale of fancy. Wherever he was taking you, you doubted it would be possible to overdress, even in your nicest things. There were a few minutes left before you had to leave, so you made sure that you had everything you might need while you were out. You ran through the essentials: phone, house keys, money, ID. As bad as you felt for Baxter, you didn't want to run into a similar problem of forgetting something important. It was a good reminder for both of you to be careful. Once you knew it was all there, you went downstairs and waved to your moms on the way out of the house. Their goodbyes and well wishes reached you as you locked up. You walked down the street and arrived at Baxter's house. Quite literally, seconds after ringing the doorbell, you heard the rattle of the doorknob turning. The door casually opened, not too fast, not too slow, and there on the threshold was Baxter, though this time he wasn't in his pajamas, but instead a full suit. That was naturally also black and white. It was the same one you saw waiting on a hanger when you visited his room. Hello, thank you for coming. Together, your elegant attire made a perfect match. That meant your remaining concern was now whether or not the location he had in mind would actually make sense for how dolled up you both were. Knowing Baxter, there was at least a 50-50 shot. You look incredible, Brittany.
I love it.
Aww. I believe that both of us will be the ideal guests for this occasion. I can't tell you enough how delighted I am that you're accompanying me tonight. Thank you. I kind of hope you be in pajamas again. His mouth twitched as if he wasn't sure if he wanted to laugh or scowl more. You chose for him by snickering. Well, Baxter readjusted his sleeves and smoothed the front of his jacket. He regained his usual composure. I'm sorry to fall short of expectations, Brittany. Hopefully that will be the only one of the night. Now you've gotten a good eyeful, you could discern that Baxter was truly himself. The exhaustion and the embarrassment from yesterday's morning adventure were entirely removed from his features. You're definitely a night owl. That would be a wise presumption. Whatever thought passed through his mind next, Baxter smirked mischievously. He flicked his wrist. To be truthful, I feel the most alive during the late hours. Shall we go? This isn't something we'd want to be late for. Lead the way. And so you both climbed into his car and were off. Baxter drove you out of the neighborhood. Your attention lingered on the starry sky for a moment, able to see the good view of the moon until he took a lazy turn. When you turned back to Baxter, his expression said little. He still offered no obvious hints about your destination. The only thing you could count on was that the place would serve some form of liquid, probably. What are we doing? Well... He diligently stared at the road, not yet out of the residential streets of Sunset Bird. You caught a glimpse of his excitement as he continued talking. If you recall, I mentioned how we saw some shows on my trip within a trip. You could call that my inspiration. Okay. Once you graciously accepted my invitation, I began the endeavor to search for a particular performance we could see together. I had high hopes for what I could manage even with such short notice, and happily I doubt you shall be disappointed. Oh my goodness, okay. He let his words settle, drumming up the anticipation. Coincidentally, the car rolled to a stop at a light. He turned to you with a proud grin. Tonight we'll be seeing a live show featuring a comedy of error-style romance. Oh, okay. So like, kind of like a Broadway show, or like... Oh wait, is this one where you can like interact in it? His foot pressed on the gas and he turned on the main road. A show. It wasn't anything you were expecting, but then again, it was Baxter. You were getting the impression he liked to surprise you. But wait, didn't you invite me for drinks? Does drinking a soda or something in the theater count as getting drinks? You understood that Baxter was striving for a mystery here, but still. I am very pleased you asked. Baxter's smile grew. He had expected your reaction. They do serve drinks, an excellent selection from what I found, and it will be only drinks. There's no food on the menu. He shrugged his shoulders, not particularly finding that to be a loss. You were glad you weren't hungry. However, as promised, the drinks are crucial to the experience. You see, this isn't as some grand arena. You'll find tonight's entertainment is at this particularly immersive setting of a jazz bar. Oh, okay. All Pancherians will witness the story unfold in that very room. His voice lowered theatrically so, fitting for the topic of conversation.
Does that sound alright?
Ooh, sorry, y'all can hear my dog barking. Also, if you like, it's possible for the actors to interact with you directly. Ooh, okay, yeah. Thank you, Baxter. It must not have been easy to get tickets. That kind of event sounded like one you went on waitlists for. What magic had he pulled? Oh, well, it was one of those opportunities where all the stars aligned. All curious, you were too excited about the show to keep dwelling on logistics. The show promised to shape up into a memorable evening, and you couldn't wait to see what happened next. Baxter drove into the heart of the city, passing by the twinkling lights of the urban night until he pulled into a public parking lot. He switched his phone's map app to walking mode. It's an 8-minute stroll from here. Jeez! You shrugged, not needing to point out that walking tended to be your main form of transportation anyways. Both of you exited the car, and Baxter made a note of where exactly he was leaving it. Luckily, the lot was well lit and located in a busy area. It'd be hard to miss. He led you across the road and then followed the sidewalk until his phone proclaimed that you had reached the correct building. Baxter got the door for you. Thanks. Of course. Inside, he switched his phone off of the map but continued tapping away at it. Now where is it? He huffed as he scrolled the screen. You could immediately tell when he found what he was looking for from his reaction. He had finally relaxed into his normal state of friendly nonchalance. Curious, he poked your head closer to read what it was. It made sense when you saw it was a digital confirmation of his purchased tickets. In front of you was a small line where a man would check tickets before waving people onward. Baxter slipped into the back and you waited until it'd be needed. I'm glad we arrived on time. Missing the show was likely the only chance of this event going airy. We'd make it work even if we were late. The other guests in line were dressed to the nines. Some were even in vintage clothes. Baxter's previous advice was correct. The wait wasn't too long. After chatting with Baxter for a moment, it was his turn to show his digital tickets. The usher was young, probably only a few few years older than you. The bags around his eyes spoke to the fact that this was nowhere near the start of his day. These are for you and your friend, right? You nodded and took a step next to Baxter, making it clear that you were here together. Cool. Thanks for coming in. We are thankful for you having us. Baxter shoved his phone in his pocket for good once he got approval. He inspected the two of you and tilted his head to the side. Here's some ground rules before you enter the show. Everyone gets them. He began explaining the guidelines, a succinct list that he'd obviously said hundreds of times before. For the most part, the rules wanted you to act as a polite human being. You could do that. Last, if you want to actually participate in the show, you can take one of these necklaces. He pointed out a box full of glowing jewel necklaces. Each was gaudy enough that anyone wearing one would be noticeable in a crowd. Wearing one of these beauties means that you're a part of the same world as the actors are. No necklace, no participation. The actors will treat you like an invisible audience member. You can still speak out if you're suddenly inspired, but nobody's going to put their focus directly on you, so any takers. It would be my pleasure. Baxter volunteered immediately, and the usher fished a necklace from the box. Yeah, I want one too. The usher pulled out a second necklace and handed them out with an encouraging expression. Enjoy the show. You were waved off and allowed to enter into the showroom past heavy double doors. The showroom was a sight to behold. From floor to ceiling it was lit up, yet none of that was bright enough to be blinding. The bar was full of expensive bottles and gilded engravings. The back had a pit for musicians large enough for a full band to play. The instruments were already set up. Oh, this place looks so nice. Wow. You were taken to the bar and seated at the two empty stools at the end. The booths along the walls were already filled with groups of other guests, laughing and clinking glasses. They had a full house. This was a popular event, maybe a bigger deal than what Baxter had presented it as. The ages varied. Some of the crowd was made up of fresh-faced 20-somethings, while others were silver-haired elders. You may have been the youngest in the room. And almost everyone was dressed up. Sequin dresses, fitted suits, and expensive jewelry as far as the eye could see. No broad generalization to be made about the kind of people who would watch a show at a jazz club, other than most of them knew how to dress. The few exceptions in casual clothes stuck out between all the elaborate, well-cuffed looks. That second usher bowed and left you alone, just for a bartender to appear out of nowhere and pick it right up where they left off. He passed each of you a drink menu smooth in practice. Nice to see you tonight. Just let me know when you're ready to order. Of course. The bartender inclined his head cordially and then busied himself with polishing a glass with a white cloth. The jazz bar took the immersion seriously. Even the guy serving drinks had the proper aesthetic for the world the show took place in. He wore subtle eyeliner, and there was something about how he carried himself that made him seem like he'd wandered off a movie set, especially with highly coordinated shabby clothes for a uniform. You shared a look with Baxter before examining the menu. From first glance, it was impressive. In total, it held 5 pages of drinks, each with detailed descriptions, and some even had photos. You turned to the last section, entirely for non-alcoholic drinks. You read the blurbs, enjoying both the descriptiveness and the sense of humor. I love non-alcoholic drinks. And pina coladas, oh my god, they're so good. A few minutes later, a waiter in a full suit turned up. His tie was a muted maroon, and the only thing separating him from his clients was his pad for taking orders. Oh, if you're wondering why I'm like, they're so good, because you can have pina coladas without the alcohol in it. If that's why you were wondering. So, yeah, they're really good. And it tastes like pineapple. It tastes so good. Oh my god, I love it. You wondered why he approached you rather than leaving you to the bartender. Maybe because it was so busy? Welcome to our show. Can I get you anything or do you need some more time? Baxter leaned forward in his chair with no hesitation. I would like a baby Bellini, please. Baxter passed the menu back. The waiter took it with a polite nod, then turned to you. You glanced over your options with one final read through and then said, you would like... Do you guys have pina coladas? Please? Yes! A virgin. Okay, yeah. So, virgin pina coladas, that's a non-alcoholic drink. That's what it's called. You handed your menu over and the waiter put it with Baxter's. He inclined his head politely one more time. Thank you, esteemed guests. I'll return shortly. The waiter sauntered off and vanished through a side door away from the bar. Baxter's fingertips tapped the corner rhythmically. The soft sounds faded into a din around you. He met your inquisitive glance with confidence.
Not bad.
I knew what I wanted as soon as I saw the name. I firmly appreciate sparkling drinks as well as peaches. With a wicked smirk, his voice lowered to a husky rumble. Maybe my headphone volume isn't up all the way. With a wicked... Okay, no, I read that. I would prefer without the baby, however. You snickered. It's only the truth. In the distance, the musicians filtered onto the stage from backstage. The sounds of turning strings took over the soundscape as they prepare for the big event.
Exciting.
The action approaches. There were still a few minutes before he thought the production was scheduled to start. The air was full of anticipation but still relaxed. The two of you chatted over your respective jazz music experiences until the waiter arrived with the drinks. I want my 𝐃𝐞𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐢𝐩𝐭𝐢𝐨 colada. The waiter carried a silver platter with stiff formality. He passed out the glasses, not even leaving fingerprints due to his white gloves. Curiously, neither drink had been filled at the bar you were sitting at. He placed your virgin 𝐃𝐞𝐬𝐜𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐾𝐿ada on the counter in front of you before setting down Baxter's baby Bellini. Bellini? I think that's what it's called. Bellini? Thanks. Thank you so much. Gently, Baxter lifted his drink to his lip and sipped at the fruity beverage. He appeared as the very picture of sophistication with a stem glass in hand and a distant, unreachable gaze. Sitting there with him, everything suddenly hit you. His formal clothes, his fancy drink, the glamorous setting, and his dazzling smile all came together. He had pulled out all the stops for this adventure. It felt like whiplash compared to what happened with the far simpler, much more normal cafe date. It had to be intentional. You were certain that the sparkling glitz was his goal. He'd practically said it out loud with his original invitation. You were never going to underestimate him whenever he got an opportunity to prepare. You picked up your own drink and sampled the refreshment. It was delicious and had a pleasant consistency. After a flicker of the lights and an electric moment of silence, you heard the sounds of a keyboard. The crowd hushed, waiting on bated breath, and the rest of the band kicked in. A saxophone cut into the song before being backed by a chorus of trumpets. A bass player strummed along while the drummer kept the time. Everyone around you strained on the lookout for something. Nobody was sure what, but they know when they saw it. The double doors at the front opened and all eyes were on a pair as they entered. The leader strode in with her heels clicking against the glowing walkway. Her form-fitting evening gown sparkled in the dazzling lights. She strutted to the center of the room, a grimace on her red-painted lips. Behind her, another actor casually followed. They easily could have been passed over, especially with many of the guests around them dressed far more formally. This character was plain in appearance, especially compared to the glitter of the other. They took quicker steps and reached out. Oh, okay. Both of the characters came to an abrupt stop at the center of the room. The glamorous one spoke loudly, letting her words carry over the band. My darling friend, you know I don't have time for this. I have to prepare for the show and must rest my voice. How else will I manage to sing? The singer sidestepped away from her friend, creating the space between them. I do not want to discuss this. The friend shrunk away but refused to back down. There was fight in the way they stood. The singer sighed. She crossed her arms, her frustration towards the topic making her next word bitter. It is more than enough that my parents and his parents keep bothering me. You don't need to add to that number, my dear. I can't leave it alone, not when you're making such a mistake. The singer put her hand up, dismissing her friend. Her movements were as sharp as her stilettos. I repeat, I don't have time for this. I'm going to my dressing room. She swept across the room, then glancing in your direction before quickly looking away. She exited through a door near the band. You were struck by her last impression. Was that sorrow, longing? Either way, you had gathered the situation. The two were acquainted, and the diva was a performer at the venue. Her friend wasn't. They had come to offer unwanted but likely needed assistance. The music slowed down, suddenly somber after the frenetic energy of the singer's outburst. Her friend hadn't moved. They hugged their arms around themselves and slumped into feet. You were so focused on that when a voice came right from behind, you almost fell out of your stool. It's like talking to a brick wall, isn't it? You craned your head over to the bartender. He was the same man who had passed you the drink menu. He was still at work polishing a glass. Oh. He was part of the bit all along. That probably wasn't even a real bar. Yet again, their commitment to realism surprised you. The friend took a deep breath before rushing over to the counter. Now that they were closer, you could tell their clenched hands were shaking. They directed a scout at the bartender in full force. You need to talk to her. Unlike when they had spoken to the singer, these words were bitten out. They weren't as close to the bartender, not willing to allow him the same niceties afforded to their friend. The bartender scoffed in their face. He wasn't any fonder of them, but he was trying to retain an ounce of professional decorum. Why would I? I've got no attachment to that lady. None of the crowd was buying it. You heard unconvinced snorts throughout the room. And she acted like I wasn't even here. Besides, she wants the stage and that's it. All I'm good for is watching her, same as everyone else in the world. He gripped the task tightly. You could faintly hear the polishing cloth squeak against it. She's not interested in my words, just as she told you. There's no time for that. The friend objected harshly, pointing a finger into the bartender's face. They weren't letting him get away with such a falsehood. She can't admit it because you won't. You're making me laugh, kid. The only folks who want us together are you and our parents. He shooed the friend away by flinging his hand through the air, where he had the audience captivated, half of them flinching from the gesture. I'm working. Don't block the bar. The friend tossed their hair at him before they skulked away. They waved at a booth of necklace wearing guests and then slid onto the edge of the cushion. They rolled their eyes and their entire head along with it, intentionally exaggerating, and their new table mate snickered. I don't know how I put up with either of them. You were starting to get a feel for the show. All the actors' behaviors were turned up to 11 for the sake of comedy.